What's up, y'all? This is Matthew from the Rim Review. The Rim Review is a page that offers in depth player analysis and gives nuance to the way that you watch basketball. And we are back, going over every single prospect in the upcoming 2026 NBA Draft. In today's first episode back, we're going to be looking at the point guard from Louisville, Mikel Brown Jr. When talking about Mikel Brown Jr.'s offensive strengths, there are a few things that stick out, most notably his playmaking instincts and overall court awareness. He does a really great job at getting downhill and finding the open man, or even in pick and roll, kind of dissecting the defense, and it leads to some really great baskets and also just some really impressive assists that can be shown in the film. Additionally, speaking about pick and roll, he's a great thinker. He was an 89th percentile in points per possessions and pick and roll possessions, and that can be shown as he's able to, as I said, dissect defenses. He can also be an exceptional shooter, whether it's off dribble or spot up. He shot 36% off of dribbles, while 41% on spot up threes. And so he can kind of be used both as a one or a two, depending on what NBA teams are using him in a lineup. And then lastly, for his offensive strength, he's quite shifty in isolation. He can get downhill with ease, and he's got a really good quick first step, and so his ability to accelerate gets him to the paint pretty easily. But that kind of translates to his offensive weaknesses, most notably the fact that he's kind of off balance around the rim. There is times where he might get around the rim and then finish off one, and it could be an easy basket if he just was disciplined, but he just doesn't do that. And so there are some flashes, but that's something really he needs to work on. And then along with that, something he needs to work on is the fact that he settles for some questionable shots, especially off the bounce threes. There were 27% of his three-point attempts were on early jumpers, and so there's just some poor decision making when he could rather flow into some offense. And then lastly, the last offensive weakness that I have is that he sometimes wants to make the extra flashy play, and that results in some questionable decisions, which result in 3.1 turnovers per game, which for him, that was 27th in D1. So now going into the first part of our analysis, we're going to be talking about transition scoring, most notably the fact that he has some questionable shot attempts. And so right here, Mikel Brown shoots a pull-up three with 3 seconds in the game. 3 seconds into the shot clock. I don't think this is a terrible shot because it's a low pickup point, but I'd rather go into some flow, maybe some get action, passing to a trailer and try to get downhill. And so he can make these, but not the greatest decision. There are times where Mikel Brown can benefit and help his team without the ball. Right here, he is great. He's sprinting to the rim, and something that you don't really see in transition that often, although this is not a missed shot, it's a turnover by Amani Hansberry, is that Mikel Brown is wanting to sprint to the corner, but then he realizes that he just needs to beat these two guys, and he's a pretty quick, shifty guy. And so the fact that he can, outrun this, big defender, and he can get an easy dunk and extend the lead to 13 points coming into halftime. And then another part of his transition is the fact that he can kind of be a little flashy, as I said. And so right here, he helps get a steal. Cameron Carr loses the ball and he passes in the air, which I don't think is the worst decision. It's kind of flashy, something that might go on ESPN, but I don't love the passing in the air, which can result in some turnovers. But in this scenario, Javon Hadley is just sprinting to the rim, so it's no issue there. Next, we're going to be going into pick and roll decisions, and so this is going to be an example against Wake Forest. So right here we can see a nice over-the-head assist to Sanedra Frew, but there's a lot more to this clip that you don't realize. And so this is going to be a rescreen, which means that Sanedra Frew right now is going to set a screen, and it's going to be a low pick and roll. So he's going to be almost try to set a screen on his butt. And so Sebastian Akins jumps over the screen, which results in Sanedra Frew being, a smart, higher IQ big man, where he resets a rescreen, which means that Sebastian Akins is going to be behind the play, and as a result, the big man Cooper Schwieger is going to have to help up, resulting in Sanedra Frew simply just diving to the basket, and Mikel Brown can get an easy pass and assist. That's just some beautiful pick and roll action that Mikel Brown does consistently. This next example is going to be another pick and roll example, but this time it's going to be in drop coverage. So right here we see that Sanandra Frew is going to set a screen, and right now Mikel Brown sees that this is going to be very deep drop. Christian Gerdak, not a very shifty center, and a lot of NBA teams play drop. And so although this is going to be a turnover, there's a good teaching point, and it shows that Mikel Brown has some pretty good instincts. And so obviously Mikel Brown is benefiting from this high quality screen from Sanandra Frew, as he's got a very large frame. But Sanandra Frew dives to the rim, as we see right here, and Mikel Brown has the instincts to see that Gerdak is going to be behind the play, and Mikel Brown can simply throw a lob. Although it's not the highest quality of passes, he can work on that, and he's got that good instincts and decision making, although it doesn't completely pan off. And then this next example, it's off of a make, and Mikel Brown is going to flow into a ghost ball screen. And right now he's on balance, but it's an off 1 foot. It's off of 1 foot finish, and so it's kind of counterintuitive, but I think this shows his balance. And so right now we see that the forward flows into a ghost, which means he doesn't set the ball screen, and Mikel Brown does a good job at getting downhill. He stops right here, and he's off of 1. And so again, it's not off balance. It is on balance, but it's not off of 1. And so he's able to have a tough finish, around the rim. And I would prefer to have a off 2 finish, but it shows that he still has that balance in him. It's just not every single time. Right here, it's going to be a pick and roll, and Henry Vesser is going to switch. And as I've said, and we've seen, is that Mikel Brown is pretty shifty around the rim, but there's just sometimes these questionable decisions. And so Henry Vesser, Sanandra Frew is setting a screen on Jaren Stevenson, as we see right here, forcing a switch. Mikel Brown knows he can, or thinks he can beat him, and tries to do a step through, but Henry Vesser is just too big, and it's a missed basket. This example is going to be Mikel Brown against Jalen Lowe. Ali Khalifa sets a brush screen, which means that he doesn't hard set it. It's more just like a very lackadaisical screen, but it's still good enough where, if we see right here, Jalen Lowe is going to have to try to fight and bully through the screen. And so we can see that Mikel Brown has a little hesitation, but that's effective as he's able to get downhill. It's off balance, but it's an athletic finish, and we can see that Mikel Brown is hyped for his team. In this example, it's another example of a switch, but we're going to be talking about his perimeter shooting. And so right here, it's going to be a switch and some bad communication on Baylor. As we can see right here, Javon Hadley sets a screen, and there's just some bad communication, and even Cameron Carr really is not that high. We can see he's pretty low, and Mikel Brown has the realization that this can be an easy off the dribble 3, and it's an easy bucket. However, sometimes these off the bounce 3s are not the greatest. Right now, Mikel Brown is getting guarded by Darius Acuff, and he gets some space, but it's just it's 10 seconds of the shot clock, no paint touch. I'd really prefer for Mikel Brown to maybe set for a rescreen like one of our previous examples, but this shot this deep and this early in the shot clock is a little worrisome. But as we've seen before, he can hit these baskets. But then there's scenarios with this shot where it's just a complete bad shot selection. He's shooting off balance, and it's a completely he's not able to set his feet. His shoulders aren't straight, and you can see that it's short to the left. And so it's not even like he's that open either, because the defender does fight through the ball screen pretty well, gets a contest and a hand up, just not a good shot. But you do need to respect his shot, because there are times where he can make it. Right now we see that that's a 77 ball screen, also known as a double drag. He's able to hit those shots, and I think the beauty with Louisville that a lot of NBA teams do is they play double drags, as I said, which are 2 screens on the ball, which results in this example, Ryan Conwell ghosting the screen, and Mikel Brown is open for a 3. Now let's talk about Mikel Brown shooting, one of his greater strengths. So as I've talked about, Mikel Brown shoots 36% off the dribble and 41% on spot ups. And so right here we can see that Matt Abel is undisciplined, falls for a pump fake, and Mikel Brown has 1 pound dribble and it's an easy basket. This is another example where I think, although it's not a make, it's a great teaching point that he does have some great instincts off of the ball. And so right now we can see that this is some zoom action, which means that Isaac McNeely right now is setting a pin down, and then the guy with the ball, Ali Khalifa, is also dribbling towards the ball into a dribble handoff. And so the UNC defenders recognize this and decide that they're going to switch this pin down screen that Isaac McNeely is going to be setting. And so as a result, the two defenders are going to switch. And so it's some bad communication. And as a result, Mikel Brown is going to step one step forward and then bounce back, resulting in an easy wide open basket. And so right here, he does that, is patient off the dribble. Although it's not a made basket, it's great shooting and a great instinct. Now let's talk about playmaking, and I think this is a really crisp example of just showing how patient he is, even though in quick decisions. And so this example right here, Mikel Brown is getting guarded by a big, Ali Khalifa sets a screen and they force a switch. And so right now it's some bad communication and he finds a wide open man in the corner. But I think the beauty with this clip is that, he sets a screen, it's a switch, and it's again bad communication, and there's two guys on the ball. As a result, Ali Khalifa is going to be diving to the rim, and then that at this point it's this guy's low man's decision to almost pick your own poison. Am I going to either help Ali Khalifa, who's diving to the rim, or am I going to help and guard Adrian Woolley? Mikel Brown, which I think executes this perfectly, is that for a second you can see he's looking at Ali Khalifa, which means that this defender and low man's going to pick up, and he finds Woolley in the corner. And so it's almost a no-look pass, and then it's a made basket, shooter's touch. We love to see it. Another example of playmaking would be his change of pace. We see that it forces a switch again, and I think Mikel in switching situations is going to be very dangerous. And so this right now is a hockey assist, and one concern, as I've talked about, is his rim decisions, because at a time, although this looks really cool and I think it's a great, flashy assist and flashy pass, he's passing in the air, and so that could be a little bit worrisome if there was a situation where this guy right here, it hasn't fully rotated and is going to Sanandra Fruit early. That could have resulted in a turnover. Another playmaking example is through pick and roll, and so he's able to find a wide open Isaac McNeely in the corner. And although I would prefer Isaac McNeely right now is above the break, I would, to be honest, in a perfect world, Isaac McNeely would be 2 or 3 steps to the right. I think it is great that Mikel Brown can see that there's a lot of vision on the court, and he sees a wide open man. And in the NBA, there's going to be a lot of situations where Mikel Brown, and no matter what situation he's going to be in, there's going to be a lot of great NBA shooters in the corner that shoot 35 plus percent from three, especially a corner three. And so we can see that there's a screen set here. Boopy Miller, they decide to switch, and so Mikel Brown is ahead of the play, and Isaac McNeely does not need much space to score, and there it is. And then the last example of playmaking is just simply in the paint. And although this is nothing, too crazy, Mikel Brown can do a little bit of work, finds a late dish to Sanandra Fruit. Nothing crazy, but a point of emphasis that I wanted to show that he isn't just a pick and roll and isolation player. And speaking about isolation, he's got a really great quick first step, which we can see in this example right here. And so there's no switch, but Mikel Brown sees that the defender's lacking. He really isn't in a stance. He is able to blow past him. There's no low man to help. Athletic finish brings a ton of energy to the team. We can see that the whole entire bench right now is electric. The game's over. Mikel Brown's able to make those type of plays. And then here's another example versus Indiana. Late in the shot clock, the defender, is high, up at his grill, and although there are times where, Mikel Brown, is a speedy guy, he's trying to, simply get a quick first step, and get blow by the defender. He isn't able to, and it results in some poor rim decisions. There's still, 2 seconds of the shot clock, so he can, get downhill, land off two, but in this situation he doesn't. He's off of one, and it doesn't hit the rim. So there are times where he needs to work on that balance, and there's some flashes, but he needs to work on it, obviously. Speaking of some of his decisions, I think around the rim, this is another example where he's getting guarded by Sam Walters, Michigan transfer. And so right now, it's a tough bucket and a tough step through, but it shows that Mikel Brown can be physical too. He just doesn't have to simply go to the rim and try to finish through contact. He instead is able to fight through contact before he gets to the paint. So right here we see, he spins and is slow and methodical. And so he's able to slowly develop. And I think these show some great flashes rather than, strictly going to the rim, trying to go through contact off of one. That's not a great decision. This one is, though. In this next example, this just shows how Mikel Brown is pretty creative, even with a simple hesitation move. And so Mikel Brown's simple ability to just have a quick hesitation and blow by the defender kind of shows his elite speed and ability to get downhill. He also is able to go in isolation and shoot threes. And so right now this is off of a miss, and the Kentucky big is too low, and that's an easy basket. And I think this shows more because again, Mikel Brown's instincts, he sees previously in our first example where this defender is going to be too low and he's going to be below the three, and Mikel Brown has range. And so the fact that he's not bothered by a 6'11 defender in transition and he's able to simply just shoot over him as this defender is again giving him too much space. And then lastly, talking about change of pace and isolation, as we've talked about throughout all of his isolation plays, sometimes he has some off the bounce threes where he's just trying to do too much, and so we can see that shot is missed short to the left, and again he's just trying to do too much. He's able to chain a couple of moves together, but a step back three, it is 20 seconds through the shot clock, but not the greatest of decisions, especially when you could maybe try to, as we can clearly see that San Andrew Free right now is pointing that he wants to set a screen. He wants Mikel Brown to go off the screen and maybe go downhill, but Mikel, decides not to. Not a great decision. Let's now get straight into Mikel Brown Jr.'s defensive strengths. The first thing you'll notice is that he's elite at converting turnovers to points. He consistently stays up the floor and is able to get steals, and as a result, he either passes to an open teammate or goes coast to coast with it and then gets an easy bucket. He's also able to guard the ball, and that's something that I feel a lot of offensive talents in this NBA draft are unable to do. He does a great job at popping back and having a body in between the ball he's guarding and the basket. I'll also say that he isn't just a small guard that can only guard the ball. He's able to hold his own when he's guarding the post. He can switch 1 through 3 and is, I'd say, above average at defending the post for a point guard. And then lastly, defensive strengths wise, he does a great job navigating screens, and he consistently is aware of his surroundings. And it shows because he was in the 82nd percentile in off-screen defense, which is, I think, a major impact where you can stick Mikel Brown off ball and on ball and switch basically 1 through 3. Talking about defensive weaknesses, something that is a little scary that you do need to note is that he loves to gamble off the ball, especially in help defense. He really wants to get those steals and go coast to coast, but as a result, sometimes he's behind the play, which you can just hurt your team tremendously. And then secondly, he kind of has an awkward closeout technique. He almost gallops, which I don't think this is a major weakness. I just think it's something to notice, how he's kind of choppy and doesn't, just go straight into the chest of the closeout, the offensive player that you're, guarding. Thirdly, I think that he, faces adversity, especially guarding shiftier, smaller guards, and they're chaining multiple moves together. Sometimes he can, fall for a hesitation or complex dribble moves. And then lastly, he does sometimes have some difficulties guarding in the pick and roll. It's more not because he's a small guard, because he's 6'5", but he just sometimes gets clipped or isn't able to navigate and fight through the screen. And as a result, he was in the 14th percentile in pick and roll defense. This first example that I want to point out is his consistent with his weaknesses, which is that he sometimes gambles. And although it sometimes may pay off, which it's shown in this scenario right here, it's a little worrisome. And so instead of simply standing up and trying to get back to the rim right here and just try to play vertical, he tries to poke it out. And although he does pay off, there's a scenario where he just easily gives up a wide open basket. And then now let's transition into on-ball defense. And so, as I was talking about before, Mikel Brown does a good job at popping back. And we can see in this example right here, he's closing out and pops back and stays vertical. I think the impressive thing with this clip is the fact that he's the low man and he recognizes and is able to close out. And although this is a great snap decision from this Virginia Tech player, Mikel Brown, all of his momentum is coming this way, and he's still able to have a strong right foot and pop back. Stays vertical at the end, and it's a great defensive play. This is another example of how he's able to stay in front. Right now he's guarding a shifty Doug McDaniel on Memphis, and so right now he forces a bad settle. And although this is a shiftier guard and he kind of gets beat, this right here, his fact that he's able to, again, all of his momentum, Mikel Brown Jr.'s momentum is coming this way, and the fact that he's able to stop on a dime and stay in front is quite impressive, especially for a guy so young. This is going to be an example of that. Sometimes Mikel Brown does get beat on those simple crossovers. There's nothing really you can, really do, but he really is just, behind the play. Gets beat, no body between, a little unfortunate. Next, we're going to be talking about another example when Mikel Brown is guarding Doug McDaniel. In this example, although he did play good defense in the previous example, he does struggle. He falls for a fake, falls for the pump fake, jumps, and you're just behind the play. I think that Sneijder Fruit does a great job as a help, and he's able to stay vertical, and so Mikel Brown benefits from great defenders around him, but I don't love that example right there. And then one of our last on-ball examples, he's going to be just fighting physical and having, again, as I've talked about, body between, walling up. And so right now we can see that he's not afraid to take and absorb contact, as you see right here, and then continuing to slide, absorb contact through the chest, and have his hands vertical. And so again, that's a tough finish by number 1 on Georgia Tech. However, I think Mikel Brown did everything correct in that play. We're now going to be looking at Mikel Brown in pick and roll defensive situations. And so right now we're playing Indiana, and Tucker DeVries sets a really strong and hard screen, and he basically gets murdered. And so sometimes it's not great navigation, and he's just unfortunately clipped in that scenario. And it happens, a few too many times. He kind of needs to gain a little bit of weight. In this example, Mikel Brown does war and fight through the screen set by Malik Ewan. And I think Mikel Brown does a really good job at fighting, moving his shoulder to the downwards and to the right, and able to try to fight through the contact. But at a point, he's just riding the offensive player and causing a foul. This next example is an example of pretty good screen navigation. And so we see in this scenario that we're playing, Derek Dixon is going to be driving towards an empty side. And so we see that Zayden High is going to be setting a low ball screen, and Mikel Brown does a good job at jumping through the screen, right, as we've seen right here, and having a good recovery. Although in this example, Derek Dixon isn't happy that he probably did get fouled. There are scenarios where I do think he does have decent navigation skills where he's able to pop forward. And this defensive possession, we see Mikel Brown and another number 53 on Louisville, and they just have some bad communication. We see right here at the start of this play that Mikel Brown goes under the screen, and as a result, as most centers do, they rescreen the ball, and Mikel Brown is forced to try to war through the screen. And so, as a result, I don't know what was Louisville's decisions, whether they're going to blitz the ball screen as it sees right here, or maybe just simply a switch. But Mikel Brown is kind of in no man's land, as he's not guarding the man, or he's guarding his original, player. And so as a result, bad communication is not on the ball, and results in a mid-range shot. A lot of NBA players are able to pull that off. And then similar to pick and roll, DHO, kind of the same thing. And this is an example where he's able to convert those turnovers to points. And I think, as we see right here, Mikel Brown is up the floor. I think it's beautiful. They're going into a dribble handoff. Mikel Brown analyzes this and is aware. He's able to fight through this pick and roll, or through this dribble handoff situation, and then goes coast to coast with it. Goes off two. Strong finish. We're now going to be talking about Mikel Brown's arguably the strongest part of his defensive game, which is his off-ball decisions. And so right here, we see that Mikel Brown is in a defensive stance. He sees the telegraph pass and is able to capitalize on it. Again, he's pretty patient as we're talking about his ability to convert turnovers to points. We see right here, he's up the floor, makes a creative pass, prevents the ball from going out of bounds, and this is just a classic ESPN type play. Another example of Mikel Brown forcing a tough catch. It's a tough catch right there, and then it's going to be an athletic finish, get the whole crowd, rowdy. But I think the thing right here is that Mikel Brown is going to be fighting with this Cincinnati player at the wing. And the fact that he forces that tough catch results in, although this is just straight up a pretty bad pass, the fact that has this physical fight in him is so impressive, and I think it could really capitalize for a player that's getting drafted for his offense but still has these capabilities on defense. Now we see Mikel Brown at the bottom of the screen, and I'm a little concerned. In this example, he's not in a stance at all. We see right here standing straight up, and although he's not up the floor, I think it's a pretty good position. He's just not in a stance. And as a result, he's not in a stance. He's caught off guard. Four is able to make a snap decision, get downhill, and he tries to draw a foul. Is not called. I'm not really surprised, and gives up a free play because he wasn't in a stance. Off ball again, we see Mikel Brown at the top of the screen, and he's kind of on that stance. And again, when he's in a stance, he's dialed in the game. Mikel Brown is an elite off the ball defender. He's able to see the V cut from the Memphis player, and he's able to recognize this poor decision and capitalize it on a turnover. Now he's going to be guarding on the ball after an out of bounds play, and he's kind of behind the play. Unfortunately, as I've said, Mikel Brown loves to gamble, and so right now he's guarding Cameron Carr at the baseline, follows him, thinks that he can get a fancy coast-to-coast steal, but unfortunately he doesn't. He's gambling. I think he really should just let Cameron Carr get a catch and play on-ball defense, get help with Ryan Conwell and Javon Hadley at the corner of the wing, but instead he's behind the play. It's a 5-on-4, and it's going to be a basket. We've got just a couple more plays, and now we're transitioning into help defense. So right now, I think Mikel Brown, as we've talked about, he loves to gamble, and unfortunately, this is just another questionable decision. As we see, Mikel Brown is the low man, which means that he is either going to be helping, play vertical for if Acuff decides to, drive down hill, but he sees that Acuff is going to be making a pass to the corner, and so Mikel Brown recognizes this, but tries to be fancy, get a steal, but he's completely out of the play, and that's just, bad defense. However, I don't think everything's bad defense, as I've talked about in help. He's at the top of the key, and he does a great gap, forces a bad turnover for Boopy Miller, and his ability to be in these gaps and quickly just stab at the ball and get back to his man is elite. And we can see right here, he's not afraid. He's aware. He's looking around. Quick stab, and then able to capitalize for that turnover. Again, another help defense example. Mikel Brown is able to do both, although it's not as fluid as you would hope for a veteran NBA player. I think it shows a lot of possibilities for Mikel Brown to grow. And so when I mean a player can do both, I mean when someone's off ball, I want them to simply stab and quickly, gap and then go back to their man. And so in this example, we can see Mikel Brown is, later in the stance, but he's in a stance. Quickly, he's got a gap and then try to, in a perfect world, he's going to sprint back. We can see he gaps and takes maybe a half a second, but he's still able to get a contest. And so his ability that it's a possibility could be great for his growth. Talking about post defense, as I've talked about, Mikel Brown is a pretty solid post defender for his size. In this example, Kadir Copeland, one of NC State's transfers, is very, very good with post play. We can see right here, he's at the top of the key and just loves to simply get into a post and spin move, but Mikel Brown is not afraid to fight. As we see, this is just a great picture right here. Mikel Brown's low, has his elbow on Kadir Copeland's butt, and is able to just stay vertical, and this is elite post defense, especially for a guy at his size. In this post defense example, we can see that Connie Ruths and Mikel Brown decide to switch. And so as a result, Mikel Brown is on, a 6'10", 6'11" Baylor defender. But again, he's not afraid to stand ground. And this is again another perfect example of post defense. He's able to let physics do the work. He's got a strong chest, stays vertical, and this clip right here, the fact that he's hands straight up, not afraid to show his hands, elite, especially for a guy, again, he's so young, but he's got that distinct awareness of how to guard the post. And then my last, very small weakness, but something to just notice, is his choppy closeout. And so right now, you can look right here, Mikel Brown is at the bottom of your screen, and he's the low man. And in this example, they swing it to the corner, and he almost kind of gallops and drags his feet. And although it's not, nothing of a crazy concern, it's something that I did notice and I wanted to point out. When thinking about Mikel Brown Jr. as a whole, I've got a lot of thoughts. In my opinion, I think he is a top 3 to 8 guy, which I think in some people's eyes, that might be a reach, but I think the film tells a really great story. Firstly, I think he's one of the best guard prospects. I think he's a little bit better than Acuff, a little bit better than Kingston Flemings, and he's just such an elite offensive talent. And I think any NBA team that has him would be very, very well off. And it's because of both his impact on the offense with and without the ball. When he's got the ball, again, as we've seen, he's able to simply use his isolation skills and get downhill, and he has very good pace and athleticism and is able to slow down the game while also speeding it up with his acceleration. But then at the same time, if there's a scenario where he has to play a 2, he can do that. He's not strictly a guy that can't space the floor. He's able to, but he's able to play both roles, which I think is such a major impact. And it tends to be scenarios where these elite offensive talents, they cannot do anything for defense. But that's not the scenario for Mikel Brown Jr. Although he's not the most elite point guard that can guard the ball, I think that he's really, really good at guarding off ball, and he can guard 1 through 3 due to his higher IQ and his ability to guard the post. And so I think the fact that he can kind of do really anything you want on defense, and he's such an impressive elite offensive talent, I think any team would be grateful to have a point guard like Mikel Brown Jr., and I'd gladly pick him in the early lottery. Thank y'all so much for watching another episode of the Rim Review. I know Alex is gone, but I hope y'all are excited for some more NBA draft content. I'll see y'all next video.